Now I'd like to introduce our last keynoter, and his name is Dr. Oliver Chan. Since graduating with a PhD from the Department of Criminology at the University of South Florida, Dr. Chan has contributed significantly to research on bullying, sexual violence, and youth violence in Chinese societies, especially Hong Kong. He has also assumed leadership in research on youth violence as he is the author of several journal articles, plus the editor of journals, plus books, and he's authored, again, dozens of these writings. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Oliver Chan.
Thank you. Thank you, Samir.
Good luck.
Thank you. All right. A very good morning, everyone. I know today is the final days of conference Yay we go to. Before I begin with my presentations, I need to send out a few thank you. First, I need to thank to Dorothy's and WABF for bringing me here to speak to you on this large platform. And the second thank you, I need to shout out to Jun Sung Hong, a good friend of mine who put my names out to WBF. And we have a book coming out next year. It's a research handbook. So please look out for that one. It's on bullying and school safety. And of course, everyone's here, the frontliners, the teachers, the scholars, the academics, the psychologists, and all of you who cares about this topic, school bullying, cyberbullying, and all sorts of school violence. We want to prevent it, we want to intervene it timely and effectively. I am a criminologist, I am a forensic psychologist. I'm no expert in bullying research. Bullying research is only one of my 3 streams of research interest. As Samir says, that my primary research interest is on sexual violence, especially those who sexually kill. All we learned throughout the years in the literature saying that those who are so violent, we can trace back to their childhood. They must have ACE, adverse childhood trauma or adverse childhood experience. But again, those are the responsibilities of the care of the parents or caregivers. But we have a gap in between. Like Deborah says, that should ring a bell. We should have the warning sign. Is there something that we can do during their school years? Is there something happen to them when they're going through primary school or elementary school and secondary school years that we need to know to stop them, to intervene before it will escalate? And a lot of research to date says that victims or offenders do not undermine the effects or the potential consequences of bullying behavior. Not just kidding, just for fun, but it can escalate. And we see a lot of those cases, even though it's the minority, we see those in youth violence and also youth sex offenders. So this is the reason why it draws me to study more about school bullying and cyberbullying. Can we find a trend here? Can we pick up something, a telltale sign and indicators that tells us to act now, not wait later? And of course, another stream of my research is on stalking behavior, intimate partner violence, intimate partner stalking. Well, this is a range of events throughout the years of kids to adulthood that have a lot to tell us about, to look for before it escalates, before it becomes more serious. And this is where I'm coming from as my research profile. So, like I say, in my presentations, I will not give you any signs, I will not give you any suggestions, any tips, how to prevent, how to intervene, because you all, the frontliners, the teachers, are the expert. I'm not. I'm just going to tell you something. There are 2 main agenda or main objectives I have for today. Number 1, I'm coming from the East, I'm glad, and I'm proud of that. I'm representing one of the voices in this forum to tell you, to share with you what's happening in the East, especially in Asia, in Chinese society, through my 15 years of research on school bullying and cyberbullying. Are there trends of the dynamic in school bullying, cyberbullying, similar with those happening in the West? Are these all bullying behavior dynamics universal? Is there any influence of cultural differences happen in between that makes that different from what happened in the East compared with the West? This is my first objective. And my second objective, which is the main thing for this presentation, is to raise awareness. Throughout the forums over the past 2 days, we heard a lot of prevention, intervention, victims, bullies, but we tend to neglect, but thanks to Gavin, brought up a small sign of what we need to talk more about, especially in this forum, are those who once are victims, the potential or the probabilities of them becoming the offenders or the bully. Excuse my language for being such a labeling people victims and offenders, because I'm coming from criminology, we tend to label them victims and offenders. And of course, not all bully or all offenders that will become offenders or they continue to become offenders throughout their years. They can desist from crime, from criminalities. They might also be victims of crime or victims of bullying. This is where I want to raise the awareness to everyone here. The overlap between victimizations and offending. This is the presentation structures. Like I say, the first objective is to show you the dynamic, the phenomenon of school bullying and cyberbullying in Asia, particularly in the Greater China region, which is mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. And after that, I'll show you, discuss or share with you my research in Hong Kong and Macau. And finally, we touch more on the victims-offender overlap. Try to see if there is any trend or any dynamic that stood out to you that is different from what we've seen in the West. Before that, I'd like to put some definition out. What is psychological criminology? This is the terms or the terminologies that I push forward in the past few years. Psychology is the study of behavior and mental process that we all know, many educational psychologists, many clinicians, mental health professionals here. We do not need to emphasize more, but for criminology, we study the crime. We study the criminal, especially we study the victim. So psychological criminology is to use what we learn in psychology to explain deviant and criminal behavior, in this case, bullying behavior. And of course, we examine not only the personalities, characteristic personality traits of that individual, but we also want to touch on the social, the situational factors that play a key role in why that particular individual commits such an act or being the victims of a deviant act. My entire presentation is based on the papers, the selective papers, major papers that I published on bullying behavior with my mentor. And when we look at the Chinese culture in the Chinese context, we all know that a lot of Asian countries, the Asians, we are the collectivist societies. In these types of societies, compared to the West, where most of you are in the individualistic societies, we are willing to sacrifice our needs, our privacies, so that we can fit into the group. Group conformity is the highlight of this type of society. And of course, when we refer to school bullying, the very common themes or common behavior that stood out in most literatures coming from the East, from the Asian, it says that social exclusions. It's very, very common types of school bullying behavior. Not only the offline bullying behavior, but also the online bullying behavior. And I'm going to show you some reports from UNESCO published 2018. that sees or differentiate different types of bullying behavior, physical fights across different continents. And we see there's not much significant difference between those who experience or involve in bullying behavior in Asia compared to other regions in the world. So will the dynamic of bullying behavior, universal? And this is across the different age group. But it's kind of struck me or allowed me to ponder more, is that it says that by the age of 9, the bullying behavior start to die down or in a decline trend. But what I have learned from the literature, it says that from the age of 7, it starts to pick up and peak at age of 12 to 14 or 12 to 15, and then start to decline. So this is something that I need, or we all need to learn more or to research more. And in terms of different gender, we all know it's common males are more difficult than females, especially in terms of more of the physical types of bullying behavior, of violence. And again, we see not much difference when we look at the different types of bullying behavior, why they're being bullied across different continents in the world. And this will move us to the next slide or next portions of the presentations that I will share with you what is the phenomenon, what is the dynamic in school bullying and cyberbullying in the Greater China region. I might be a little bit outdated because this paper was out in 2015, which is 8 years now. And in terms of the traditional school bullying victimizations, we see the prevalence rate is slightly low in Taiwan, which the maximums that they reported is 50%, but we see the gap is quite big in mainland China. The study is coming from mainland China, 2% to 66%, 6 out of 10 at worst. They have been victimized in the past 30 days. And in terms of those who perpetrate such bullying behavior, we see as high as 78% in the Macanese population. But again, bearing in mind that that's only one study in this 700,000 populations region. Young male, when we look into the literature in the mainland China, young male and overweight and obese because of their appearance, because of their look, they tend to be the easy pick by their peers. As for those who perpetrate bullying behavior, they are more outward, they are more externalizing their behavior, they are more impulsive, they are more aggressive. But whereas for victims, they tend to keep everything to themselves, in a state of denial. They will be isolated, they're depressed. This is what we've seen in the literature in the West as well. Now comes with what I want to draw your attention, which is the bully victims. They tend to be more hyperactive, they have a lower assertive and pro-social skills. If you happen to find or identify students in your class, in your schools, that kind of resembles or having such behavior problem, you may want to spend more time with them. Those students or adolescents that have no future goals, that live here and now, they do not sees themselves being engaging in their schools, they have low academic performance, they are more likely to engage in bullying behavior. And similarly, in the literature in the West, individuals who do not being cared by at home, they have low school grade, they are very depressed, they always think of killing themselves. And one thing that stood out is that the time they spend on the internet. Especially kids nowadays, they spend a lot of time on the internet. So they are more likely, they have the higher propensities to being picked up by their peers or strangers in worst case. Adolescents who have been involved in physical fights many times are the boys. Often feel lonely or had considered suicide, have suicidal thoughts. They are more likely to be victimized by their peers as well. Involved in the physical fight, it's not as the perpetrator who initiates the fight, but it's the one who being picked by their peers. And when we look into the literatures in Taiwan, a lot of those coming from a good friend of mine, JK. He was a keynote in last forums. He's now in Hong Kong as well. He found that school bullying was far more serious in junior high school, which is similar to what I mentioned in the peak of their bullying behavior period, 12 to 14, 12 to 15 years old. Males are more likely to engage aggressive behavior than females. Like I mentioned before, they are likely to peak at the junior high school and then decrease. The adolescent psychological health was indirectly, according to his research, related to their experience of peer victimization, if they have a group of friends to support them. So peer support, parental support, teacher support, school support are important to intervene school bullying behavior before it escalates to more serious. Those who perpetrate bullying behavior who are manipulative, moral indifferent, moral disengagement, and the lack of concerns for others are fairly adjusted to their school, accepted by their peers. This is kind of counterintuitive of what we have been thinking. And I want you to pay more attention to manipulative and the lack of concerns, where we'll come back on these two traits later on in my research. Being depressive, having high delinquency rates, receiving lesser teacher support, no support from their teachers, from the schools, they are more likely to engage in bullying perpetrations. And to Hong Kong, where I've spent the past 15 years there. Verbal bullying, relational types of bullying behavior are most prevalent. Adverse psychological background, where they are being neglected at home, increased exposure to violent value, especially through social medias, different types of games, they are more likely to engage in bullying behavior. Coming to Macau, research in Macau, it's very, very limited. It's only a handful. If my memory serves me right, to date, that's only 3 or 4, less than 5, definitely, paper coming out from Macau. And me and my mentors, we published 2 out of those. Yeah. So a shout out to the my mechanist peers, do more research, learn more about school bullying and cyberbullying, and so that we can share it to the world. This is no difference from other parts of the world, where male adolescents engage more physical types of bullying, beating, stomping on someone's stomach, where females are more relational, social exclusions, Do not allow one of your peers to join your group, talk back, naming them. And switch gear to cyberbullying perpetrations and victimizations. And there are not a lot of papers coming out in the Greater China region. Well, this was published 8 years ago. And in Hong Kong, we have published 8 studies. And we see the trends here is the prevalence rate, it's about 6 out of 10. Students have been cyber victimized. This was 8 years ago. I'm pretty sure that the number will change today, given the technological advancement and how many hours a kid spends on internet, on iPad. And in terms of those who engage in cyberbullying behavior, perpetration behavior, mainland Chinese, there are 3 studies, and the rate is between 3%, it's kind of low to me, up to 35%. Where in Hong Kong, which are the big metropolitans, all the kids have their access to the internet, they are more likely to perpetrate such behavior. Male and those who have poor academic performance at school are more likely to victimize their peers. They are more likely to use more than one tool to victimize their peers. Social medias, Facebook, Twitters, and at the same time using Signal, using WhatsApp to victimize their peers. Adolescents who were perpetrators and victims, the bully victims who experienced victimization, who also engaged in perpetration behavior, were 2 times as likely. And for those who only victimize their peers, not a victims of bullying, were 4 times as likely to be exposed to violent online game. So this is what we know already. Violent online games, improper use of the internet, spending too much time on the internet, on iPad, on mobile phone, have poor outcome to the kids. And in Taiwan, male adolescents are more likely to engage in cyberbullying perpetration and at the same time also fall prey to victimizations. Internet addictions, spending too much time on the internet, can be exposed to being victimized, not only being victimized, but also engage in the perpetration behavior. Those who spend too much time on the internet are more likely to pick up depressive symptoms, more likely to have suicidal thoughts. That's only one study before our studies comes out in cyberbullying. Perceived social acceptance of cyberbullying behavior. It's normal to have someone send hateful message to you. It is normal that you say something bad, just joking. It's not a problem. Social acceptance of such messages. Internet self-efficacy. This is a double-edged sword. Self-efficacy being more assertive. You know what you want, you know where to put a stop to it. But at the same time, it can be over-assertive, that you neglect the potential negative outcome. These are the strong predictors of cyberbullying perpetration behavior. And I'm going to show you a short video clip, 2 minutes maximum, to show you the phenomenon of bullying behavior, cyberbullying behaviors that happen in the mainland China. But I have to disclose, this video has been a few years back. So I'm not sure whether it's how updated the phenomenon or the dynamics in mainland China.
School bullying is a growing problem in China. The education authorities have launched a campaign to curb it. A juvenile crime psychological expert told CCTV News what's driving up the frequency and the possible means to tackle the problem. Our Wu Guoxiu reports.
快点！再弄一回，这回明脑子，明脑子，再弄一回。快点！我不懂，你想走。
This online video clip shows several teenagers hitting two students in turn and forcing them to kiss. It's just because of some scratches on their motorcycles.
都过来跟我们压着，然后捅我们脸，然后一脚我们多可远。
The student says they were insulted for over 1 hour. School bullying is happening more frequently in China. Many students even record and post the incident online. Professor Zhang Jing has been studying juvenile crime for 3 decades.
一个原因的话呢，就是宣泄。
From the mental aspect, school bullying happens for 2 reasons: the need to release stress and the study of violence from communities, families, movies, and computer games. In China particularly, our primary schools lack the education of love, telling students to love animals and other people.
爱的教育。
China's State Council has issued a circular to curb bullying in primary, middle, and secondary vocational schools. The campaign will focus on mental health and legal education for students. But China's criminal law doesn't punish minors under 14, and those between 14 and 18 only get light or mitigated punishments. Professor Zhang says other options are possible.
除了警察那种。
I think it's not necessary to put them in jail. Besides the police deterrence, we can punish them with forced study, restrictions, and even forced work in the
我
community.
给你一定惩罚，不见得是把你关到监狱里头。
Zhang says the children are innocent and lays the blame on their education. This school anti-bullying campaign lasts until end of this year, but some experts believe it's a tough, long-term task. The government, schools, society, and families should work together to help the younger generation to develop a sound character. Wu Guoxiu, CCTV, Beijing.
The videos was a few years back, and the professors is the supporters of the punitive approach, but I'm sure nowadays the restorative practice, it's quite prevalent in the mainland China. All right, move on to our research on bullying and cyberbullying in Hong Kong and Macau. We have a sample, a considerably large sample, representative samples of nearly 2,000 of secondary school students in Hong Kong. We send our questionnaire to different schools. We sample kids between age 11 and 19 with the mean age of 14 years old. So this group, most of these kids are at their peaks of their bullying behavior, 12 to 14, 12 to 15. And we use cyberbullying and traditional school bullying perpetrations and victimization measures, reactions to their cyberbullying, and how they cope with their victimizations. And of course, we also put in our psychosocial measures, the personalities, personalities measures such as self-efficacies, empathies, and also school-level variables, how they see the schools has a harmonious settings, school climate is good or not, a sense of school belonging, and of course the family attachment, the social bonding with their families, the parental care is also important when we bear in mind that Asian societies, Chinese societies, we emphasize more of the family. And we see that 7 out of 10 of the kids says that they have no issue with cyberbullying perpetrations. They did not victimize, they did not engage in the perpetration behavior against their peers. And nearly 8 out of 10 saying that they have not been victimized in the past 30 days. But again, this is, we all know as researchers, as academics, there's always limitations. when we send out questionnaires, when we use a quantitative method to do our data collections. They can fake, they are not reporting honestly, so there are some limitations to keep in mind. And in terms of different types of bullying perpetration behavior, most of them says that social exclusions in the cyber world is one of their primary tactics to perpetrate, to victimize their peers. Using online text to insult, to send out rumors, to isolate their friends are also common. For those who experience victimizations, the most common type is that they're having their own family members' photograph and video being posted without their permissions on the internet to humiliate, to degrade not only that person, the victim himself, but also the family members. They receive annoying and vulgar messages, Facebook messages, WhatsApp messages, to pick on them, are also very common. And we do not see quite a difference in terms of the gender. So both gender is pretty much neck to neck in this case. And when we use regressions to run some associations, some correlations, we see that male and those who have a big sense of school belonging, they tend to skip classes, they do not attend school regularly, they are more likely to engage in cyberbullying perpetrations. For those who have a higher empathy level, able to feel for other people, are more likely to be victimized. And cyberbullying perpetrations is positively correlated with traditional bullying perpetration. There's no difference between these two types of perpetrations behavior that we found in our studies. So it's offline bullying, online bullying, similar? It is in our studies. And the same goes to cyberbullying victimizations and the traditional school bullying victimizations. And our next research, next papers, we talk about for those who are being victims of cyberbullying, how they cope with their experience. We have 3 gender differences found in our studies for those who moving against using aggressive approach to fight back, to retaliate. This is where we see the trends here, the bully victims, the one that I want to emphasize in these presentations. And also gender differences in those who use the passive approach to move away, to avoid, to block the messages, to block the accounts, to stop other people from further damaging their life. And male adolescents are significantly more likely to shout out for help. They use an active approach. And those who have a lower level of positive school experience and involvement do not involve in school activities much. These are the students who tend to avoid and to use passive coping strategies to cope with their victimizations. They are less likely to call out for help. They're less likely to talk to their parents for help. They keep everything to themselves. Counterintuitively, for those who have a positive perceptions of a harmonious school, which see the school as safe place to learn, who have a good school climate, they tend to use a passive coping. Again, this is rare. It's not what we expected from the kids to behave. For those who are higher level of pro-social behaviors, they use an active coping. They talk to their parents, they talk to the teachers, asking for help. Well, this is what it's most striking out. Higher level of empathy. They are more likely to use the aggressive coping. They're more likely to fight back. Remember when I asked you to think of the terms manipulative. And in a more criminological sense, especially psychopathies, psychopaths can fake empathy level. They can manipulate, faking their emotions can be a sense of manipulations of other people to take advantage of other people. I'm not sure whether this is what it's happened here. This is one of the reasons that we can think of. Another reason that we can think of is that empathy is not just a general empathies. There are cognitive empathies, there are also affective empathies. You understand that this will do damage to other people, but you cannot feel for them. And also empathy, there are target-based empathies and also situational-based empathy. They can feel for other people, but at this very moment, at these situations, they do not feel for the victims. Or they have a target that they will not feel for. This is an interesting findings that we found. Males are more aggressive, and at the same time, they are more likely to call for help. And those who are older, compared to younger kids, they are more likely to engage in active coping, which is good. And when we look into perpetration behavior, specifically on online and offline bullying perpetration behavior, we see quite a number of gender differences here. Where male adolescents are more likely to execute or to perpetrate physical bullying, more direct fight, verbal bullying, extortions, exclusions. Not just female would do the social exclusion, but male do too. And also both types of cyberbullying, overt aggressive behavior and relational aggressive behavior. So boys are the more difficult case. And we see in this research that both online and offline perpetration behavior, they overlap, which means that I can physically pick on someone, bully them, beating them, but at the same time, I can also go online to victimize them. There's no separations on different types of bullying behavior. Like I say, high empathy and high pro-social behavior, low family bonding, low level of seeing a school as a safe place to study, low engagement in school activities, more likely to engage in bullying perpetrations. For male adolescents, high empathy and low positive school experience and involvement are more likely to lead them to perpetrate cyberbullying. This is where we single out victimizations before we study the overlap. And for female adolescents, again, we see the similar trend here. High empathy level, high pro-social behavior, where everyone loves them, where they can have a group of friends that follow what she says, are more likely to engage in bullying perpetrations. Whereas the opposite is true for those who engage in cyberbullying perpetration. Low pro-social behavior, low sense of school belonging. This is the trend that we see in the West, a similar trend. Switch gear to our research on Macau, which is only 700,000 populations. We sampled 2 schools. One school is a boarding school where they put all the juveniles in that school. They are not serious enough to be put away to detentions, to jail, but they put them in a boarding school. They only can go back home once a week during the weekend, but they have to come back to school, study there. And another secondary school is the regular secondary school where students come and go every day after class. That will be the control for us. The age group that we sample is 10 to 11 with the mean age of 13. Again, it's the peak time where bullying behavior tend to happen. The measures that we use are bullying perpetration and victimization. This time, we are testing criminological theory, social bonding theories, and the low self-control theories. And of course, is there any relationship of school bullying behavior with theft and violence delinquency? And we see is that commitment, low commitment to education, skip class, do not go to class often, poor academic performance, do not believe in the legal systems, they're very self-centered, increase in age, older adolescents, involvement in organizations. This is not those regular organizations, conventional organizations that we can think of. It can be criminal network types of organization, triad society, mafia, youth, delinquent youth groups. They are more likely to engage in bullying perpetrations. Younger kids are more likely to be victimized. And we test the low self-control, different elements of low self-control, being impulsive, prefer to do simple tasks rather than difficult, that will use up a lot of your brain energies. They are risk seekers. They are very self-centered, very selfish. They are very emotional, poor emotion management. They are more likely to engage in perpetration behavior. And for those emotions, poor emotion management, at the same time, they are more likely to be victimized. All right, coming back to what the main agenda for this presentations, the overlap. In the past, especially in the literatures, in criminologies, and also in forensic psychology, we see victims and offenders as 2 different groups of individuals, 2 different groups of service recipients. That their treatment program, that their services should be tailor-made to victims only, offenders only. But in the past 2 decades, we found out that these 2 groups of individuals, they have more similarities in their personalities, in their social influence, in their family elements, than differences. And the overlap between victimization and offending has been tested in different types of criminal behavior, and they really found significant overlap. This includes bullying behavior, sexual offending, that I've tested that and we found significant overlap, stealing and dating violence, intimate partner violence. The literature are out there saying that these 2 groups of individuals, they have more similarities. And the thing is that when we provide service, when we treat or we provide care for this group of individuals, should it be different from victims-only service, offenders-only treatments program? Or there can be a 3rd group of service recipients. And we're using nearly 2,000 samples of secondary school students. We found that 3 out of 10 of the participants or the adolescents, they reported that they have been victimized before and they also perpetrate bullying behavior. But bearing in mind that this prevalence rate might be high to you, but we are talking about 13 years of age where there seems to have their bullying behavior or bullying incidents peak during that time. And there is no difference between bullying perpetration and bullying victimization in this group of sample. The odds of an individual to bully other people increase nearly 3 times when they themselves are victims of school bullying. And the significant overlap reached 64%. And being a female are more likely to victimize other people, to experience victimizations at the same time. But you might question, what is the temporal order? They become victims first or they become offenders first? This is a good question that we will think about in our next project by collecting longitudinal data. And in terms of the substantive risk factors for traditional school bullying perpetration and victimizations, all these different elements or social influence, interpersonal elements, personality traits, point to the same directions where they have low level of empathy, low level of pro-social behavior, low level of family bonding, low level of perceptions of a harmonious school. They do not belong to that school. Their beliefs are more likely to become victims, offenders at the same time. Well, at least throughout their school years. And we try to see if we can replicate the findings in cyberbullying. And we see is that the prevalence rate being a victim's offender at the same time is 15%. This is quite low comparatively to traditional school bullying behavior. But of course, we cannot neglect that these subpopulations in the bullying incidents. We see the same trend here. Cyberbullying perpetrations are significantly positively associated with cyberbullying victimizations. For those who cyberbully other people, their odds increased by 653%, 6.5 times more likely to have been or will be a victims of cyberbullying. And when we break down to 2 subgroups of cyberbullying, the overt aggressive cyberbullying victimization, the odds increase to 8.4 times. But of course, it dropped a little, but not too much, when we only focus on relational types of cyberbullying behavior. But all in all, the overlap is there. 76% for general cyberbullying, 92% for overt aggressive, and 99% for relational aggressive cyberbullying behavior have been found to significantly overlap with one another. Again, being a female is a significant predictor for them being a victim's offenders. And the substantive risk factors is the same, all pointed toward the same directions. I'm going to show you a 2-minute clip on, from Singapore to see how prevalent victims offenders is in the high technological society.
We had a case last year where a boy was being attacked in the toilet. They put down his pants and they filmed it with a phone. He didn't want it to be reported because he said the bullies will actually do more harm to him if he reports.
Bullies, to compensate for feelings of disempowerment that they feel when they are themselves bullied, they will then inflict harm on others in a way that allows them to feel that thrill that their bullies had felt.
Why do you think teens do not want to speak up about cyberbullying?
They think it's a point of weakness to ask for help. People think, it's normal, and they just brush it off, but actually it's really affecting them down inside.
If you report every single person who has cyberbullied you, a lot of people will be judging you for that.
I think young people are afraid that their parents will cut access to technological devices. For young people, communication via these devices is very much part and parcel of their day-to-day life.
Very common in Chinese society.
What we can do is teach children social responsibility, social etiquettes in using the phone. We need to really get out there and tell the children this. We can't take the phone away from them. That's not going to work.
So the reasons that I want to draw your attention to that video is that 2 in 3, those who have been cyberbullied, they will perpetrate cyberbullying behavior to other people. Again, we see the choose of power imbalance as their victims here. And in terms of implication for practice, we have done papers, we have done research using the restorative practice, the whole school approach, to see is there any effectiveness, is there any changes in bullying behavior in the school. I'm not going to bore you with all this extra information. I'm sure that you all know this well, much more than I do. There are 3 types of approach: proactive, proactive, and reactive. And we use the whole school approach, which is a more proactive, involve a multi-level of involvement. There are 16 key actions: the school levels, the classroom levels, the individual levels, and of course, the school level includes the parental support. And we design an interventions using the inspired by Dane and Smith on restorative justice, restorative practice, which emphasize on victim support, mediations, try to solve things, solve conflict between the victims and the bullies, to enhance social inclusions, to create a good school climate. Using 1,500 secondary school students. Again, we pick our samples at 12 and 14. 4 schools involved in this research, where we have a full implementations of restorative whole school approach program that lasts slightly over 1 year. We deliver that to 1 school in full, 2 schools we partially implement such practice, and 1 school is the control, where there's no program given to their students. And we measure the baseline and the post-line, the first month and after the 15 months of program. And before we began with the program, we found that 36%, 3 out of 4 students, believe that they have engaged in bullying behavior, let alone being a victims or a perpetrators in the past 30 days. And we see significant difference in school that being delivered or engaged in the full program. partial program being delivered, also we see a significant drop in their bullying behavior. And for that school that do not have any practice or any program being delivered, their behaviors become worse. Thank you for bearing with me for the past 15 minutes. What I want you to take home in my presentations is that will the culture play a part in school bullying and cyberbullying? This is something that we need to do in our next research because we neglected, we did not include the cultural context in our research. This is what we can do to do a comparative studies. And the second one is that I want to create an awareness that these small groups of individuals, these small groups of kids that might need our more attentions. We need to identify them, to help them, to support them before they can escalate to a more serious criminal behavior, which is not uncommon in adult criminal work. And the whole school approach works effective in our studies. Thank you. If you have questions, please do not hesitate. I'm happy to share with you our research, and like I say, I do not want, and I'm no expert in bullying research, but I just want to share my research with you all and hope for more research will come up, especially in the overlap between victimizations and perpetration. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Oliver.